Hello, my name is Arnie Herz, and welcome to the podcast, Habits of a Whole Heart, as part of the Humanity Matters series here at the Holocaust Memorial Tolerance Center in Glen Cove on hmTv. Now I have, for a second episode, my guest, Mo Wolfe, the owner and founder of Evolution Pilates in Port Washington, New York. Mo just shared about her journey and so much great information about Pilates and its relationship to health and wholeness. And now we're on for a second episode, as we promised after the first episode. So thank you, Mo, for staying for another episode.
Thank you so much for having me. This is really such a treat.
Thank you. And Mo shared that the goal of Joseph Pilates was to allow people to have a vibrancy of their physical being, because this is the only place we could reside. This is what really resonated for me, and that he wanted people to feel the zest and joy of life. And so that's what we're really aiming for here. And Mo, you also mentioned during the break how you just came back from Bhutan. It's a fascinating place. Very few people go into Bhutan. And that you came back with an attitude of gratitude and how chill it was. So before we go into a little bit of Pilates, I want to, tell us a little bit about the trip and what was so...
It was really just incredible. I've always been fascinated by other cultures, and I think travel is a way to open up your mind. But this was a trip that my son had wanted to take. So I was traveling with my son, his wife, and her parents. And we started in India. So it started with we were in Delhi. It was very chaotic and loud and, all the things that you think of when you think of India. And then you land in Bhutan, where it's they intentionally limit tourism, and Buddhism is their philosophy. And the way that they try to preserve the culture, from the dress to the architecture of all of the buildings, even as they're modernizing, there's not a single street light in Bhutan. There's not a stop sign. There's not a yield sign. It's just... You care about the other people and are aware of what's going on around you. So it was just really, and it's funny because they don't measure gross domestic product there. They measure gross domestic happiness. And that's very, very important to their culture. And I have to say, the people really were very happy, even though I had also read it is one of the hardest working nations in terms of the number of hours that people work in a day. Because there's still a lot of physical labor that's done there, or the people who work in the tourism industry, you're working the entire day. If you're going to go on a hike, you have to get up at 7, and the people are coming back at 6, and then you're making sure that they're taken care of. But it was remarkable because everyone just really wanted to share their culture, and it was amazing how much they revered their way of life and the royal family there. It was a great trip. It was also a humbling trip. You have to hike pretty much everywhere. If you want to see the temples and the monasteries, they were big hikes in pretty high altitudes. And here I am thinking, I'm hot stuff. I own a Pilates studio. And the first few days, I was like, what's wrong with me? Like, why am I struggling so much? But it was really a lot of the adjustment to the altitude. But it was magical. And it, to just bring that back somehow to Joe Pilates, I was struggling with my lung capacity and my ability to breathe in that higher altitude. And breath was one of the most important things in Joe Pilates' philosophies. He said, it's our first act of life and our last act of life. So the importance of taking full breaths, and how it's thread into some of the exercises. So, but it was a great trip. And when I read that you had spent 4 years in India before, between starting, was it before law school? Was it after college, before law school? I was just fascinated by that and wanted to hear a bit more about that. So how you found yourself wanting to do that, because it's unusual, I think, at that age to want to do something like that. So
yeah, I think that, first of all, I love what you're sharing. There's advantages and disadvantages to modern life. The advantage is we have so much more that's available, so much easier, but it's so much more chaotic, so much more noise, so much more busyness, and less time for ourselves. Just the thought of what you said, our first breath. Our first act as a human being is a breath, and our last act is a breath. Super powerful.
Yes. It's interesting because Joe Pilates' first language wasn't English, it was German. So some of the stuff, when he got it right. And then some of the other stuff is like a little clunky. You're like, well, wait, what did you mean of this? Or it's very harsh sometimes, the way he would say something. So.
Yeah. And I was reading about how the breath, I just had a grandson.
Congratulations.
I didn't have the grandson, but I'm the grandfather in October. So that's
great.
Going back to what you were saying in the last episode, I need to be able to get on the floor and get up and down and
lift overhead.
Yeah, exactly. But I was thinking about birth. The heart's beating in the womb, but there's no breath.
That's right.
The breath does not start until you're out of the womb. And again, it's the last thing. So things that we take for granted, our body, our mind, our heart, breath, and that's bringing consciousness to that. And then when you realize how sacred all this is, it creates that attitude of gratitude that you were talking about, and it allows you to relax a little bit. And it doesn't, through the busyness of the world, there's a lot of stuff to worry about, to think about. But if you're just caught up in that adrenaline overload, you're not going to be able to make an impact. I was thinking about this as I was driving over, all the different things happening all over the United States and the world today. And
it was very nice to be away for 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I was thinking about how important it is, like in the car, I just sit very quietly and just tap into that stillness. And I was thinking that part of this podcast is to give people back their own inner tranquility. And from that place, to be able to act responsibly instead of being reactive and overwhelmed. And when you were talking about Pilates in the first episode, the mind has to be so focused for 50 minutes about everything that's happening that it actually stills. And then you get back to your point of center and you go out into the world empowered and focused. So that's my observation.
Yes, I think that that's very true. Very true. It's funny, one of the other things that sort of became one of our unofficial taglines is this thing like, it's just Pilates. So it used to be that if there was a scheduling snafu or something happened and the phones were down, like I would get incensed at the beginning because I was coming from my corporate background and wanting everything to be just so. And then I was like, really, at the end of the day, it's just Pilates, and that I think can be expanded to really almost everything, that most things are not as big a deal as we make them to be. And so much of the things that people stress about are completely out of our control. So control the things you can, which is usually yourself and the way that you behave and treat others and act, and try to let the rest of the stuff go and like not be so reactive to everything. Like let it kind of pass over you and take it in before we react.
Yeah, I love that. So when you control what's within your control, you have agency. Mm-hmm. When you try to control what's not in your control, you're a victim. It's outside of you. So we've talked about this. We had a guest, Dr. Orly Calderon, who's a psychologist, and we had 3 episodes delving into that. But you've got that. But you talk about control, letting go of control. But wasn't the beginning of Pilates the original name Controlology?
Controlology, yes. But it was really about controlling your own body. So there is still that agency. And it was because the things were complex and they required concentration. Like take coordination, that exercise that everybody gets wrong for the first few years because everything goes out together and back separately, and it's not a natural movement pattern. So, but yeah, I love, especially now where Pilates has exploded and there are some places that they're not teaching classical Pilates. They're teaching a form of exercise that's inspired by the reformer, but it may not even be a real reformer, and people are calling it Pilates. And they've got 20 people in a room and the music's blaring and the lights are going. And to me, I don't mean to ever throw shade at anything else, but that's not Pilates if you're going to define Pilates as contrology. That's something that's inspired by Pilates. And I think there's a lot of misinformation out there because somebody can try that as their first experience and either love it or hate it. But what they're doing is not the method that this brilliant man invented. And you were asking a little bit about where some of this stuff came from and how it can help different issues that people might have. Joe Pilates was basically his first client. He was a sickly kid. He had rickets and asthma and other breathing problems, and he used this method to sort of bring himself back to vitality. And then when he was interred on the Isle of Man, he used it. It was around the time of the influenza, the Spanish, so was it 1918, I think? And he would boast that none of the people he trained came down with the flu, but he used it to whatever the person could move, they moved, and used it to keep the people who were working with him physically fit. And he was a tinkerer at heart. The equipment in the studio, the pedipole, that tall pole with the springs, that was specifically designed for a woman named Eve Gentry after she had a radical double mastectomy to bring back the movement from all the cut tendons and nerves and everything. And so he was really remarkable. It's brilliant for people with scoliosis. It's, you name it, and Pilates could have an application.
Wow, I hated that machine, but now I'm going to have more of a appreciation. So that's good. Well, he was a prisoner of war. Is that right?
I get a little dusty on the actual phrasing. I think it's a little bit more like how we had the Japanese isolated. I think it was like that.
The British with the Germans.
Yeah. So some of my deep history on Joe Pilates is a little lacking, but his mindset on things is where I do the deep dive.
Okay,
I pursue what I'm interested in.
I'm famous for giving quizzes, but I won't quiz you on that.
It's good. I think it's important to admit when you don't know the answer to something.
That's great. That's an unusual thing in this world.
And then I will research it and get back to you.
That's good. So it sounds like he uses his physical therapy, and I'm assuming you're familiar with physical therapy modalities. So where do you see like similarities and overlaps?
So it is often recommended as a form of physical therapy. There are a lot of physical therapists who are also Pilates teachers, and people will choose to do Pilates because their insurance can pay for it. So that's great. I think one of the reasons people sometimes, and I think physical therapy is great. I've unfortunately found myself in a position to need physical therapy more times than I would like to admit from, I have arthritis in my back. I broke my heel. I broke my hand. And I've had like neck and shoulder stuff, and physical therapy is great. But after you learn your initial exercises, you're kind of left on your own. That's the formula at these physical therapy places. And it becomes on the person to be responsible for their own recovery. And a lot of people just don't do what's expected of them. So that's where people choose to transition to Pilates from physical therapy, because somebody's eyes are on them the entire time.
Yeah, that's excellent. Okay, great. And have you seen situations or case studies where you've seen people with serious issues who've been able to really create a major shift from Pilates?
So early on in my career, I trained a client who had MS. And, MS isn't something that you can sort of fix or cure, but she found it incredibly beneficial to have repetitive motions for muscle memory. Like the signal wouldn't go from her brain to her leg to tell it what to do, but if we would assist and have it moving, sort of like when someone's in the hospital, sometimes in a coma, and somebody's still moving their muscles so that they don't atrophy. It was the same type of thing. So I found that really remarkable. I also found we've worked with some clients with dementia, and just the repetitive pattern she was 93 years old and she had dementia, and would come in and just throwing the ball back and forth. So we'd have to ease things up for those people, but it's the same idea of like a movement pattern becomes something familiar, and from there you can build on it. We've dealt with clients who are preparing for surgery, recovering from surgery, it's really just meeting the person where they are. So it's never that the teacher has a goal of this is what I'm going to do today. Every day, even with you're going to walk in, and some days you're going to feel great and some days you're not. So it's always about training the body that you see in front of you. And there's a saying like the teacher's only job is for alignment, to make sure that you're where you should be in your body.
I like that. I'll just say that also it's a lot of fun.
It is fun.
Teachers make it fun. There's a little bit of banter that goes on. Of course, I bring some of that banter of like trying to figure out who wins at the end of the session. And given that I'm usually the only male, I win the gold medal for the men.
That's funny.
All the time and competing.
We actually have quite a few men now coming in.
Yeah.
They're the early shift.
The early shift.
Yep. Yeah. I forget one day there's a certain time where we're teaching all privates and every private is a man.
Right.
It's like Thursday at some time, but it's great to see. I love it.
Because they don't want to be in the class with the women and feel like they're inferior. That's it.
It's
I'm
humbling.
willing to do that. Yeah.
It's definitely very humbling for men. But, if you think about it, the reformer is called the universal reformer. And you're going to do it on the exact same weight setting that I'm going to do it on. But you're moving your own body weight as well. And you're over 6 feet, I'm 5'3", so it's automatically harder if you're a guy. So, and the men find it humbling because men are, I'm generalizing, but men tend to be stronger, and stronger muscles are tighter muscles. And there's a lot of stretching in Pilates, and that can be kind of humbling. But it's important to stretch. That's what's going to prevent injuries.
My key takeout, though, is you said that it's harder for men than it is for women. So I just want to echo this to Suzanne, who's trying to compete with me
Suzanne,
in Pilates. This is it.
Yep, it's absolutely true.
So Mo, we first met 10 years ago.
That's incredible. That's great.
And do you remember?
I do. I remember you were coming in. If I remember correctly, I actually did not realize that your heart condition was pre-existing. So I knew you were coming in to strengthen your core before your surgery. But I thought that was the first time you were having anything going on with your heart. And it was when I listened to your podcast that I realized that was not the case. So you are really, I think, a testament to a person who has stuck with stuff and takes really good care of yourself and does the things that you're told to do. But did you feel that it helped?
Yeah, it felt like it helped tremendously. For my listeners, you may have heard it. When I was 20 years old, I had congestive heart failure playing basketball, an intramural basketball game at the University of Michigan. And unbeknownst to me, I had a defective aortic heart valve. And that's why I went to India, studied yoga and meditation to change my whole biodynamics. And what was supposed to be a surgery within a few years, I was able to delay for 33 years.
That's great.
And then finally, at the end of the 33 years, my doctor told me it's time to have the surgery. Your heart's enlarged. And in 6 weeks, we need to get the surgery done. And we were at dinner, Suzanne and I, and we ran into Randy.
And I didn't know that either until recently.
And we started telling Randy, and Randy said, well, you're going to have open heart surgery. You're not going to be able to use your arms to get out of the bed. You really have to develop your core. So please come for a Pilates session. So I went to Pilates, and I had 6 weeks to get myself some core strength so that I could literally sit up just using my core and my abs without using my arms. And we did it. I had 3-4 sessions a week, privates. It was very difficult, but I went into the surgery very strong.
Yeah, it was great.
And I was supposed to be there for a week, and I left after 4 nights, and it was a major surgery. And then, of course, it was months of rehabbing, and then I was able to get back into Pilates, and helped me tremendously.
Yeah, you've definitely had, we always referred to you as our poster child for Pilates. We just think that you're incredible and great. But then when you had your more recent health issue, first of all, we couldn't believe that you were reaching out to us from the hospital. And then we were so thrilled that you made a full recovery. But I think the physical shape that you are in and the way you take care of yourself really contributes to that. So imagine if you were just a person who doesn't take care of themselves, eats poorly, drinks too much, is overweight. Not that there's anything wrong with that. That's not body shaming, but it taxes your body. It taxes the joints. It taxes all of your organs. And I think that's one of the reasons that you are just an incredible healer when these things are thrown in your past.
Well,
the enlarged heart, it's because you have such a big heart.
Thank you.
You really are just an incredible person, and it's a pleasure teaching you from a physicality point of view, but to get to spend time with you for the person that you are is just great.
Thank you so much. But my heart's now back to its old size, so that's I had a big heart. Now I have a normal heart. But what you just said is so true. Like when I was 20, because I was in great shape, I was able to survive it. A lot of people don't survive what I went through at 20. Then when I had the surgery, open heart surgery 10 years ago, almost 10 years ago, they allowed me to do this thing called the Ross procedure, which is a very complex surgery, basically a reconstructive heart surgery that they generally only do on people under 40 who are in great shape. I was 54 at the time. And the surgery is much more superior for long-term benefits. So because I was in good shape going into that, it helped me there. And of course, Pilates helped me make a much quicker recovery. And then 3 years ago, when I had a brain bleed, the odds of survival were less than 5%. And the odds of survival to come out with full physical, speech, and cognitive faculties without any impairment was 1%. And I do believe that, and the doctors have said this, that because I was healthy and in good shape and had core strength and had good mental fortitude and had the ability to get through that ordeal, because it was an ordeal physically, mentally, and spiritually, and then go through the rehab process. Absolutely true. And so that's why I say to my kids, be in the best shape you could be in, because you never know what tomorrow's going to bring. And that goes back to also feeling immensely grateful for the life that I have and to be able to give back. And I know that I'm here for a purpose. This is what we talk about in the podcast. And one of the things that you shared at the very beginning is how you like to create community. You like to help people have the most fit they can be so they can experience that love and zest. And it's not just about you with your own physicality. It's about you and your students, you and your community, you and the larger community. And this is what we're really about. And that's why you're on this podcast. This is exactly what it's about.
Well, it's so funny. I like to say, if I wasn't doing this for a living, and aside from maybe being a professional organizer, matchmaking, but not romantic matchmaking. But, I'm so blessed to meet so many people from different walks of life. And half the time I don't even know, who the person is or what they do in their other life. But you get to know people over time, and then, oh, you should meet this person. And putting people in touch with each other is a really fun thing to do, especially when it, works out well. So community is, there are all these studies about longevity. This guy from the Blue Zones, Dan Buettner, I'm sure, and relationships are really the key, having solid, happy relationships. And I feel like I get my fix of that in the studio, because outside of the studio, I'm, it's kind of my family, and I've always been one of these small groups of friends, not, out with 20 people, but I feel like I have this very big community, and that comes from the studio.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I think that it's very important. What you're doing is when you're connecting people, and this is in Malcolm Gladwell's book, you're a connector. When you connect people are searching, we're searching for our tribe. We're searching for people who are aligned with us.
Yes.
It helps us expand. So in a sense, it's like hide and seek. We're searching for souls that on a deepest level we're meant to connect with. And so when you introduce someone to someone else, you're facilitating that process, and you're enabling it. So not just are you physically helping people, you're helping people on communal different levels. And on that note, I'll say to you, and as I'll say to my listeners, Habits of a Whole Heart is about looking at wholeness from various different prisms. We looked at wealth. We looked at it from the prism of physicality, health, from psychology, from spirituality, different traditions, music. I'm looking for guests, people who are living at a level of community, of wanting to make a difference, wanting to make an impact, to understand the value of their life is beyond just their own life. And that's what my listeners are interested in. I think I may have mentioned to you, since we started promoting this 6 weeks ago on Thanksgiving Day, or a day ago, 6 weeks in a day, we have over 11,000 views.
It's incredible.
So it's starting to take off, and I know that this is what people are really hungering for in this time of chaos and confusion and fragmentation. How do I find an inner calm without putting my head in the sand, and so that I can operate in this world and make a real impact with what's in my control, that you were saying?
It's funny. I'm very good friends with Wendy Schulman, who owns the Rousing Salt Cave. And I was talking to her about you yesterday, saying that I was coming on this. And she's right in your wheelhouse. I have to connect the two of you. But they do all kinds of meditation, full moon ceremonies, sound bath healing, everything to just quiet the chaos in the outside world and have a little time to. She's very big on gratitude, that you make a gratitude list every night before you go to sleep as kind of your last thing. And at first you like 10 things. How am I going to find 10 things to put on this list? And then before you know it, it's like, oh, it was a nice enough day for me to take a walk outside. And, Greg put the registration sticker on my car for me so I didn't have to do it. And before you know it, if you look, the things to be happy about are there. It's just always easier to complain than to be happy.
Wow. Well, that's an interesting connection here, because after I got home from the hospital after 2 weeks in intensive care, I went home, but the next day, my first trip, someone had gotten me a visit to the Salt Cave in Roslyn that you just mentioned. And having been on respirator, having been on different things, it really helped. My first experience in the Salt Cave really helped me with the breathing and to rehab. So I would love that reconnection.
I will introduce you.
And in terms of gratitude, I think that's a beautiful practice. I said to my kids around the New Year's, what are 5 things you're most grateful for in 2025? And what are you looking forward to in 2026? And all the kids, they were able to come up with answers. And
That's
I think
great.
it's amazing the way that we've been training them to think in those terms. And I asked other people, and they're like, we have no idea. So it's important to take stock of how grateful we are. And it's really expanding. And I'll say on that note, because we're at the end of 2 episodes, that how grateful I am that you decided to come back to New York to open up a studio. I know it must not have been easy. I'm a business lawyer. I know all the challenges and through all the challenges of COVID and everything, and you stuck with it, and you've really created a community within a community in Port Washington through Evolution Pilates. And it's been fantastic for me and for so many other people. And thank you. And thank you for being my guest here.
Thank you so
on
much.
this podcast episode.
Such a treat.
And for anyone interested, Mo Wolfe will put her email in the show notes if you're interested in figuring out how to get started with Pilates. If you think you're not good, or we run into people all the time who says, I don't have a Pilates body. You do. If you have a body, you have a Pilates body. And you have the ability to make improvement. Everyone I see in the studio of all sizes and shapes. And you can do it, and you will make improvement, and it will bring joy and zest into your life. So thank you again, Mo, and thank you again for tuning into Habits of a Whole Heart here on the Humanity Matters series on hmTv. Please follow us. Please spread the word. The entire series of podcasts, not just Habits of a Whole Heart, is really trying to bring an uplifted enlightenment to humanity, to people, to be able to deal with this challenging time in the most uplifting way possible. So thank you. Until next time, I'm Arnie Herz. Have a great night. Bye-bye.